I want to thank all the frauders and sorors who are here today. Thank you so much for being with us, and also for this opportunity that the Grand Master Julie Scott has given us, as well as, of course, all the other presenters. I know you will find this an enlightening day. And I know it's a bit of a marathon, but I think that you will enjoy being with us and we'll learn many new things. Of course, I know the speakers learn new things when they present because we must research our topics. For instance, the word in the title of my presentation is numinous, embracing the numinous, and that was a new word for me. I have just recently learned this word, and I want to share with you some of the insights that came with the research. So I'm going to share my screen now. So, frauders and sorors, we're going to start with the definition of where this word comes from. And because I was a teacher of languages, I have learned that it's good to know a little bit of Latin and maybe even a bit of Greek, even though my pronunciation might not be correct. The term numinous comes from Latin, numen, meaning bowing to divine will, or to nod, as in bowing to a higher power. The term has been used in English since the 1600s in Europe, a time of great spiritual awakening and the publication of the Rosicrucian manifestos. And we see here the title page for the Fama Fraternitatis, which was published in Germany in 1614 and then throughout Europe, including England. The term numinous is often attributed to this particular scholar, Rudolf Otto. He was a German Christian philosopher who embraced Eastern spirituality and wrote in German a work called Das Heilige, which is translated as the idea of the holy. That was in 1915. He described the numinous as beyond goodness and rationality, the apprehension of a higher awareness, synonymous with having a mystical experience, or what we call cosmic illumination. Today, its use is associated with the feeling of awe, mystery, and the sacred, as in having the aura of holiness, supreme majesty, otherworldliness, and divinity. Now, here are two other words that I think you will find interesting because they're related to this concept and also to what Grandmaster Julie Scott was explaining to us in her presentation. Noumena versus phenomena. And those are the plural forms of noumenon and phenomenon. Noumena are concepts that are considered as self-existing without our thinking about them, as defined by philosopher Immanuel Kant. Perfect knowledge, not invented, but discovered. The cosmic or universal intelligence behind all things. Examples of noumena include pi and phi, golden ratio or golden section. Actuality, the quantum world underlying reality, the numinous world or the Akashic Field. So let's take a look at what are phenomena. They are the world as we perceive it through our five physical senses. How our brains create our reality of what the senses tell us. Our mental, emotional picture of the world. We cannot access the noumenal world through our ordinary senses. For instance, if you think about how a fly sees the world through compound eyes, is very different in how it interprets those vibrations than the human eye does. Noumena defy rational thought. We create symbols to represent cosmic principles. So what does that tell us about pi and phi? Because certainly we can think about these things, and they do seem like they are also symbols. So let's take a look at pi first. So what is pi? If you remember your early years in school and mathematics, pi is a Greek letter, and it is also this, it refers to this number. It's an irrational number. It's 3.141592, etc. And it goes on into infinity without repeating itself. It is the circumference of the circle divided by its diameter. You can also calculate the area of the circle. That's A equals pi times the radius squared. The circle is a powerful primordial symbol. It represents cyclic movement, harmony, and balance. The Babylonians calculated pi over 4,000 years ago as 3.125. They were very close. At right is an ancient Egyptian manuscript showing knowledge of pi as 3.16. In 1665, Isaac Newton calculated pi up to 16 decimal places. Today, computers have calculated up to 2 trillion decimal places. And if you think about it, it doesn't matter what size the circle is. Pi is always the same. Now, I know you'll enjoy a little bit of humor here because just a week ago, last Sunday, we had Pi Day. And some people actually literally make pies with the Greek symbol and the decimal place. And also what we would say last week was Pi Day because it was the third month, 14th day. That's why it relates to the symbol 3.141592, which was the distance we were to run in a kind of virtual Pi Day competition. So this is the medal that I'm going to receive for having run 3.141592, etc. miles on Pi Day. So what is Phi? Sometimes pronounced Phi, but if you are aware that there are fraternities like Phi Beta Kappa, you know that usually it's pronounced Phi. So Phi is an interesting irrational number, somewhat like pi. It is 1.618034, and it goes on into infinity. It is also a fraction or a kind of calculation, and we also say it's a ratio. It is A over B, and you see here the star pentagram and the length A and the length B. So if you divide B into A, you get phi. If you add B plus A and divide by A, you get phi. If you divide C into B, you get phi. And D into C is also phi. It is called the golden ratio, the golden section, and the divine number or divine proportion. It is based on the Fibonacci sequence. Fibonacci was an Italian who discovered this secret. He did not invent it. And you might look at this list of numbers and say, oh, I don't really understand how this works. You'll see some interesting numbers here, like the number 144, which is very important to Rosicrucians because 144-year cycle in the cycle of reincarnation. There are 144 known elements in the periodic table. There are 144 octaves in the cosmic keyboard. But let's take a look at the Fibonacci sequence and I'll explain how it works. Actually, 0 did not exist in the Middle Ages. It is an invention of, well, or let's say a discovery of the of Arabic numerals that were introduced into Europe during the 12th century. So before that, people didn't understand why we needed 0 because they would count objects or things like apples in a basket or sheep in the field. So we start with 0 and the next number is 1, and then we count or add backwards. 1 plus 0 is 1. That's why 1 is doubled in the Fibonacci sequence. We Then go to 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus the number before it is 1, which is 3. 3 plus the number before it in the sequence is 2, so we get 5. Notice how 4, 6, and 7 disappear because 5 plus 3 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13. 13 plus 8 is 21. 21 plus 13 is 34. 34 plus 21 is 55, and so on and so on. That's how the Fibonacci sequence works. And you think, well, what's so important about that? Well, it is the spatial spiral relationship of matter to itself. And we find examples in nature and in human beings. The unfurling fern, the human form. And we have the Vitruvian Man here by Leonardo da Vinci, based on the classical philosopher Vitruvius, who said that in fact the human body is in divine proportion. NASA images in the shape of galaxies, like M74 here, taken with the Hubble telescope. NASA images of hurricanes in the Atlantic. All of these conform to phi. Here, to understand how the Vitruvian Man relates to phi, is the divine ratio as it is mapped out as a spatial spiral. And if we go to the next slide, you will see the golden section and how it is revealed in nature. So as a ratio, 1 to 1.618 is like this. So 1 plus 1 is 2. And then we go on to 3, to 5, to 8, and we go on to 13. And that's how this spiral worked. We see it repeated in life on Earth, in forms like shells, also in the human embryo as it transforms in the womb. So this particular thing a few years ago kind of blew my mind, how language and mathematics are really symbolic systems. So here we see a sheep. There's a sheep. Of course, this ewe or female sheep is not a real sheep because it's a photograph. And it's not a real photograph because it's not film. It's a digital image. In actuality, it's a field of electrons, and more precisely, photons of light creating an actuality, an upside down image on the retina that the brain turns right side up and that seems to project outward into space in front of you. Remember that your eyes don't have holes in them. That in fact, this object is not really outside of your body, it's in the brain. That's where the place where we create our realities. And language is also a similar symbolic system. The word sheep in English is both singular and plural. It comes from the Old English sheep. In Latin, it is Ovis Aries. And those of you who are, in fact, under the astrological sign of Aries can relate to the perhaps characteristics of some sheep. In German, it is Schaf. In French, mouton. In Arabic, ga'na'am. I hope that's close to Arabic. But in mathematics, a sheep can be replaced by the numeral 1. So this is the Arabic numeral 1, not the Roman numeral, but although we can use Roman numerals too, it could refer to anything. A sheep, a goat, a horse, a chicken, a blade of grass, an apple, whatever have you. In algebra, we can substitute the number 1 for the letter A. A can stand for any number. In trigonometry, with the X, Y, and Z axes, and we can think in 3 dimensions, we can substitute X with any number. And of course, that brings us back to phi. as a very specific number in terms of the golden ratio. So remember, there is a world of actuality, but the way that we translate that actuality, we need to use symbols. So, what is the primordial tradition? It is also called the Philosophia Perennis, or the perennial philosophy. It exists outside of time and is the expression of the absolute, sometimes also in Latin called the Prisca Theologia. And we use the language of symbols that reveal these universal truths to humanity. And that is how the primordial tradition is communicated to us. The primordial tradition is revealed by symbols common within the world's great wisdom traditions and mystical or esoteric schools like the Rosicrucian order, revealing divine intelligence and noumenal knowledge. The subconscious mind accesses this knowledge through dreams, contemplative practice, and meditation. The conscious mind then makes sense, or not sometimes, of these images, giving them meaning. Sometimes our interpretation of these images that we receive are false, and sometimes they provide us deeper insights. The primordial tradition is the universal mystical aspect of all religions and spiritual traditions over time, east and west, north and south. Here we have a beautiful image, a painting, El Teclado Cósmico, and in 1961, also in English, the Cosmic Keyboard. It has many, many primordial symbols in it, and you'll see there also the five-pointed star, the human form, a piano keyboard, and other symbols. These are interpreted because it is also the cover image, a beautiful painting by Nicomedes Gomez, the Rosicrucian artist, for the Rose Journal's 15th volume, which is out now. So, frauders and shorers and friends, we use primordial symbols. We, as human beings, seem to be able to understand that there are such symbols, and they are common to peoples across time, across nations, and across languages. And they reveal cosmic laws and principles. So here's a brief list of some of the symbols that reveal cosmic laws and principles. The cross is a very important one. It has been adopted by Christianity as a very powerful symbol that also evokes emotion. The rose cross, which I will explain a little bit further in a moment. The Egyptian Ankh, which is also a version of the cross. So the Ankh is very powerful because it also represents eternal life. That is, the vertical line of the cross becomes a loop, so that is about the eternal return back to the material plane. The circle, the square, the triangle, the pentagram, the hexagram, two interlaced triangles, the eight-pointed star. Some people give some of these symbols almost occult significance or are superstitious about them, but that is a kind of false interpretation based on fear and not on understanding. Languages are powerful symbol systems, but before I go there, and I will in a moment, let us take a look at this Hermetic Rose Cross, because it exemplifies many of these symbols, and it is really an important image for study, particularly if you are interested in Kabbalah. The vertical line, remember, represents spiritual energy or the spiritual plane. The horizontal line, the mundane or physical plane. At the point of intersection, we have the rose. But in the Hermetic Rose Cross, we also have the symbol of the microcosm, a very small rose cross, which, as Essay was telling us, is really about the soul personality on its evolutionary journey. And here too, we see the larger rose as the cosmic rose and the cosmic plane. So let's take a look at languages, because languages themselves also reveal cosmic laws and principles. Proto-languages try to make sense of the world using pictographs and hieroglyphs. And as Grandmaster Scott told us, the Homme Droit was a very powerful image that was also shown in pictographs and hieroglyphs in Egyptian languages, early in ancient Egyptians. We can think of Vedic Sanskrit and the Vedas, some of the oldest texts that reveal cosmic or universal laws and knowledge. Hebrew, especially ancient Hebrew, but here also Hebrew letters in the rose of the Hermetic Rose Cross, again in the study of Kabbalah. Greek, as we mentioned, especially important in mathematics, also in astronomy, because today's scientists use Greek letters to identify stars in constellations. Latin, which is a really powerful symbolic system that is one of the foundational languages of English. English is an interesting language because it has the largest vocabulary of any language on earth. That is because it is a combination of so many other languages over time. Arabic, which is very important in terms of its spiritual meanings, African and Caribbean languages, and Asian and Pacific Rim languages, plus mathematics. If we think about proto-languages and proto-civilizations, very, very early human civilizations, we think of the way that they formulated symbols in order to reveal important principles to themselves and to each other, and how we communicate with each other. Now, in talking about the primordial tradition and symbolic systems, we should really talk about what is the Akashic Field, going back to the Numinous world. Remember that Akasha means space. As such, the Akashic Field is the non-local field of being or cosmic intelligence out of which all matter arises. It is the space between each inhalation and exhalation. It is also that space between the cells of our bodies, between the neural networks in our brains. It is the space between that gives rise to our thoughts. The subconscious mind is the doorway to the Akashic Field. In this alchemical image from the 16th century, we have the tree of life. And in Latin, you even see the words arbor vitae on it, the tree of life, which reveals this connection between the above and below in alchemical symbols. And some of the symbols we've been talking about are also repeated here, and you'll see many others because some of you who are familiar with alchemy know these, and you also see the powerful Hebrew letters above the circular image. Here's a quotation taken from one of the papers of the current Rose Quadjournal, and it starts like this: relating to the microcosm and the macrocosm. This relationship can be expressed through a connection between object and subject, of what is known and the one who knows. For example, the universe is an object, or what is known, and the person is the one who knows. Both can be known only if we take into account their mutual connection. Of all creatures, human beings, because we are self-conscious and can contemplate our own existence. Human beings are the most perfect reflection of the universe, and therefore mirror or reflect back the entire universe to itself. This is from Amar Dardigan's Alchemical Symbols on Stekek Tombstones and Their Meaning, Lapis Philosophorum, which of course is Latin for the Philosopher's Stone, in the current Rosicrucian Journal, Volume 15. Now, how can we know the numinous world? Divine intelligence pervades all things. The numinous is as close to us as our inner self. It is most often experienced by mystics as cosmic consciousness. And this particular page comes from the Rosicrucian heritage, which is equivalent to the Rosicrucian digest in the English jurisdiction in England, and for English, the English language jurisdiction. In mystical literature, over the centuries, mystics from all world traditions describe this experience of cosmic consciousness in similar terms. This particular image is Bernini's statue of the Ecstasy of Saint Teresa in Rome. And some of you who were on that recent 2019, that sacred tour of Italy, will remember seeing this really powerful Bernini statue. It is, of course, a symbolic representation of cosmic consciousness. And here we have the figure of Teresa and an angelic being who is about to pierce her heart. We also see the rays of light and sunlight coming down from above. And this kind of golden light is a common experience of cosmic consciousness, or the numinous. And here are some of the common characteristics. One of them is ineffability. It cannot be described adequately. Colors, sounds, light, majesty, overwhelming emotion, especially of love and connectedness. Transcendence. The experience itself goes beyond the ordinary. It is both immanent and beyond the physical. And immanent means it is very present in the now, in the moment. The experience has transiency. Such experiences are both timeless and often brief in real time. There is a noetic quality from the concept of gnosis to convey knowledge beyond our usual earth and time-bound experience. And one of the common elements or characteristics, of course, is passivity of the recipient. The mystic's will is subsumed by something greater. Here's another image from Rosicrucian artist Nicomedes Gomez. In Spanish, it is Vida, Luz, Amor, and this is one of the versions of the life, light, and love images that he painted. And this image would be particularly familiar to Rosicrucian students because it depicts the celestial sanctum meditation, including the candles and incense, and the book of instruction, Liber 777. So what are some of the effects of experiencing the numinous, or having a moment of illumination, or even the experience of cosmic consciousness? One of the experiences that people relate is a loss of fear, particularly of death. And here I do not mean being cavalier about death, but actually understanding that life is of primary importance because it is the earth plane on which we learn and evolve. But we do lose fear as a result of experiencing the numinous. Some persons will change their employment. They will note that their interests have changed, their priorities have changed. They will explore new talents. They have a greater sense of mission and need for service in the here and now. There is heightened compassion for the suffering of others, including all life. There is heightened sensory experience. Some report experiencing synesthesia, that is, associating sound with color, and other such interesting comparisons. Embracing the mystical concept of cosmic intelligence beyond religion or dogma, and conversely, a new appreciation for religious and spiritual practice. It is often common for adults who were brought up in a particular religious tradition to reject that during adolescence. But then, after having had an experience of illumination, to have a new appreciation for religious and spiritual practice. And I know that many of you who are joining in today will be able to relate to that, because perhaps that has also been true for your experience. That is why we said earlier that the primordial tradition speaks to us in symbols that are common to all traditions, all wisdom traditions, and all religions in their most mystical aspect. And we can come to appreciate that. Finally, it is easier for those who have experienced the numinous to access noumenal states, especially for frequent meditators. It is possible to have more profound and significant numinous perceptions, sensing a presence, having an increase in psychic impressions, synchronicities. Many report even out-of-body experiences and other similar things, as in seeing those who have passed through transition. Now, let us talk about embracing the numinous and how that's possible. Again, here is another beautiful image by Nicomedes Gomez. It is the Cathedral of the Soul, which the artist gifted to Ralph M. Lewis in memory of his father, H. Spencer Lewis, at the Third European Amorc Convention. And this painting belongs to the Rosicrucian order, as it was gifted to Amorc, and also is profiled in the 2015 Rosicrucian Digest, if you want to take a look at that. The numinous, in the words of Rudolf Otto, is described in Latin as mysterium tremendum. It is the overpowering majesty or majestas, the awe and wonder engendered by the greatest mystery. Cosmic illumination reveals the true purpose of being, and I know you know what that is. It is love. And this experience is fundamentally an inner one. Thus, ancient archetypes and symbols help us to embrace this experience. So, in speaking of love as our universal purpose and the universal purpose of all creation, it can also be revealed to us in the face of a child, a loved one, or a humble flower. The intuitive and experiential knowing at the level of the soul is also at the heart of our feelings of profound connection with one another. Today, we are seeding new beginnings. So, fratres and sorors, again, the point of this particular presentation is to understand that the numinous is immanent as well as transcendent. You can see it in those you love. You can see it in the growth of a plant and in the eyes of an animal. Meditation and embracing the numinous goes hand in hand with contemplation. Contemplation on the nature of our existence leads to deeper insights as an adjunct to meditation. One of the great keys to unlocking the experience of the numinous is consistent meditation or turning inward. Recall the Buddhist view of consciousness. It originates not in the brain itself, but in the ground of being. also called the Akashic Field. In the Rosicrucian tradition, spiritual alchemy aims to harmonize us with the universal soul and raise us to higher levels of consciousness. This is a quotation from Louis Verny from his particular paper in the current volume of the Rose Quadernal, Carl Gustav Jung's Active Imagination, and H.S. Lewis's Mental Creation, a Brief Comparative Study. Bernie describes at length and I would really invite you to look at all of the papers, but particularly at this one, because it is a lucid refresher of the importance of the celestial sanctum meditation. So, fratres and sorors, that brings us to a very brief and final little meditation. So, as you look at the candle flame, the light is very bright, but it is not burning your eyes. Take this light of the candle flame, this beautiful golden light, and place it at the center of consciousness. So now close your eyes and take a deep breath. And as you exhale, become more profoundly relaxed. Visualize this light at the center of your head. If you lose your focus on the light, just open your eyes again and refresh your vision with the candle flame. And again, with your eyes closed, see this light expanding from the center of consciousness through every cell of your being. Every cell enlivened and enlightened with this beautiful light of consciousness. Now take this light and move it out from you into the space around you. See it connecting with all the people who are on this Zoom call. See this light flowing out from you in all directions, into every blade of grass, every leaf, every branch, every living creature, all human beings, as we are connected in one great family. Over the entire surface of our beautiful planet. See it expanding as the aura of the earth expands. Feel yourself one with it. So mote it be.